All right, good morning. Okay, let's try again. Good morning. Excellent, thank you. So my name is Per. I was born in Sweden a long time ago. And I won't talk so much about blockchain. I'm going to talk about how it is to be digital and also how it is to be human. And I've listened to the first couple of talks, and there was a couple of things that stuck with me. One thing is, how do we navigate change? And I will talk about that from the perspective of the individual. I'm also a researcher, but I research individually, and I'm researching how it feels to live in this new world, which is organized by networks and artificial intelligence and blockchain and so forth. And the other thing that stuck with me was what Marie Wool said in regards to either you change or you be changed. So I'm going to tell you my story. I think you already heard. I'm a digital nomad, which means that I live across the world. Last year, I lived in 19 countries and 29 cities. And I'm exploring this because I think this is the future. This is how most of us will live. And a lot of people are already living that way today. And that changes what you actually need to have a great life. I'm an Estonian e-resident for the simple reason that Estonia's got the best digital platform in the world as a nation state. So they take care for a subscription rate of $50 a month. They take care of all my accounting, all my banking, all my taxation, and they just sort it out. So now I don't really care which country it is. I just care that it's being done, and I have an interface, either web-based or mobile phone, that takes care of this. I'm editor inside blockchain, so I work a lot today with blockchain and cryptocurrencies. I'm also curating a newsletter about this idea of actually living a life with fewer things, so less ownership and more access, and I will talk about that. And I've co-founded a change agency, and we are a network, and we're based across different parts of the world, and we work with different companies. Among them is Unilever, TEDx speaker, and I used to work in Silicon Valley, and I started out really early. I got online in '93, so by the time that I left, which is about, I think, 12 years ago, I've already sort of explored the first wave, and I created the first wave of companies. And I do have sons, I do have a family, which is usually the question I get when it comes to being global nomad and live in a lot of places, and then does I work with family and so forth. So in 2005, after I have left 3 successful internet startups, I started to think about this idea of getting back the ownership of my time, and of my space, and of my attention. So on your end, when you're researching, you're looking at communicating in new ways with an audience and with people. On the other side, there's a human being. And in this case, it was me, and I felt that I was being much more sort of the victim of information. I felt that I was had to be connected all the time. So I started thinking about, is there a way that I can actually use the promise of technology, which is basically, historically, all the tools that we are creating is about making life easier. So Franklin said that in the future, we will only work 4 hours a week. And we've sort of heard about Tim Ferriss talk about this and his book. And I thought, well, is that really true? I want to try it out, because logically, I know what's going on. I understand the digital world, but how does it feel? And it's actually possible for me as a human being to free up my time and my space and my attention, just as the technology is saying that I can. So I decided to start this project in 2006. I've been doing it for about 12 years. Happy to say that it works. I'll talk a little bit about what I've done. So the first step was to dematerialize everything. So when Spotify came around, I got rid of all my CDs. I think most people, a lot of people have done this. Netflix came around, and they've actually been around for over 20 years now. I got rid of all the DVDs. Then Uber came around in 2011, so I sold my car after the first ride. And that was in December 7th in 2011. So I've been using Uber for the past 7 years. And instantaneously, when I get picked up by those big Lincoln limousines, which were the only cars they drove at that time, and it was a pretty expensive drive, it was $65. But instantaneously, as I stepped into that car and I could relax, I just thought, why do I need a car for? Why should I be responsible for both owning a car and also driving around a car? Got rid of the car. And then Airbnb came around. And I thought, this is interesting. What about if I get rid of my house and only live in Airbnbs across the world? And I started thinking about this idea, because what's inevitable should be immediate. And I think this is inevitable. I sort of see the trend. But how does it feel? Not just going for vacation using Airbnb, but actually living in one. So I got rid of my house. And I started living in an Airbnbs. I've done that now for 1,500 days. And it's amazing. So I have a house in Bali with a big pool. I have this hacienda in Mexico. I have this really cool mountain retreat in Tahoe. I have access to millions of homes. So this whole idea of ownership, that I need to own everything that I'm using, just completely disappeared. So now I have less than 100 things. And you can fit most of them, except for I have a book collection, which is probably 80 books of my favorite collectible books, signed and so forth. But the rest you can fit in a carry-on. And the only thing you need today, and this is specifically if you come from sort of the Western world, is a passport, a crypto card, I'll explain that more, and a phone or some kind of interface, Apple Watch, some kind of screen or voice interface to interact with the world. And that's where I see, and what I've learned is the big gap as an individual, because I'm still living in the Stone Age, where a lot of us are in sort of traditional industrial mindset and industrial world, and yet we have access to all this cool technology. So I made it my work to actually step into this new world and try out everything that I could find. In many cases, I found stuff that you don't really have larger companies embracing yet. So last year, I used the whole year in only using cryptocurrencies. So any money that I got, that I got paid for in dollars and euros and pounds, I converted that into cryptocurrencies, which was actually a really good year to do that. One of the best. But that was pure luck, I think, with that timing. But I realized by using cryptocurrencies to paying for things and transferring money, I realized how superior this new global currency is compared to all the fiat currencies. It becomes so much easier because you don't have to think about if you have to shift fiat currency or what we call regular money, paper money, in between countries. I don't have to carry them. They can't be stolen. I can just move seamlessly across the world. So now the only friction was actually moving in between nation states. That was the only friction. And that friction is going to disappear as well. And that's sort of the struggle that we're seeing in lots of parts of the world. And my perspective is that we have a local reality. So that's what we're here. I mean, we're here locally, we're here physically. That's our reality, what we're seeing today. And there's also a global reality, or global platforms that we can use wherever we are. And that's equalizing the playing field. So I've worked in Morocco, and I talked to the guys there, and they have the same opportunities using global platforms to do what we can do from here. And that's slowly starting to sink in, and people recognize across the world that the playing field is being flattened out, and we're living in a network-based world. So my theory and what I've been working with, and what I'm working with, is organizing everything in networks. So I don't really think about the world as analog or digital. It's rather the network theory. And that's very much what the blockchain stands for, so the distributed, decentralized networks. And that's a challenge to a lot of large companies. Large companies are organized as pyramids, so more authoritarian, and the same thing with countries. So this is my next project, to sort of explore that space of continuing seeing if I, as an individual, can work and collaborate with people using the different kind of networks that we have. Both the ones that are hierarchical or centralized, like LinkedIn, and also the new ones, the blockchain-based, with like doc.io, and a bunch of new blockchain-based services that are emerging that I'm sure that we will start using within the next couple of years. So getting rid of things and not owning things feels really, really good. And that idea of just getting rid of friction. So from my individual perspective, anything that comes into my life as friction, I just say no to. So I stopped being employed by someone because there was too much friction getting stuff done in a company. I stopped partaking in meetings, like these 1-hour meetings that kills every day. And I said no to a lot of friction. I was very brutal about this. So I made a list of what's wasteful in my life and what's valuable in my life. Wasteful, meetings, commuting, owning certain things, too much maintenance. And what's useful? What do I really find valuable in my life? And I saw my family and kids, my travels. You know, I like surfing, hiking. I like to work on stuff that I'm passionate about. I like writing, I like reading. And suddenly, this whole new world that we're part of, you don't have to find that many people that dig what you do to be able to create a really, really great life. And I think that's the big shift. That's the big shift that we're seeing. And you already know of a bunch of people that have been able to create that. And that's the artistic part of us, the creative part that I think we should focus more on than getting stuck in technology. So I'm trying to live a sustainable life. And sustainable both in the sense of taking care of nature and being aware of nature, but also sustainable of the length of my life, that I can sustain this, I can keep growing, I can keep developing this personal equity in a way that I really feel that I'm growing and thriving, and not just surviving. And I'm using cloud services now. I'm using blockchain. I'm using artificial intelligence. I no longer go shopping. I've stopped shopping a bunch of years ago. I have this app. It's called Magic, and it's an AI. And I just write in and say, I need a new pair of sneakers. And they know where to send it, because I have a cloud storage with a few things that I have. So I have a physical, virtual address that actually, if I want physical products, if I need a new shirt, a new pair of shoes, it will send it to that service, or will send it to this hotel here. So I no longer interact with brands. I don't longer interact with shops, because it became too much friction. I need to free up my time and my space and my attention. And there's so many people that want my attention that I can only give attention to the things that really, really matters. So the fewer better things, the stuff that really, really enhances my life and helps me do what I want to do. And I understand that this can be a little bit challenging, but this is only one personal perspective. This is not a market research. This is not a bunch of people. I do think that there's a group of people, because I met other people doing the similar things. So there's a group of early adopters, people that are living on this edge, trying out this new wave of things. And some people push through and decide that, yes, I want to live this way. Other people sort of, okay, that was an interesting experiment, but I do want to have my own house, or I dig having my own car, and so forth. And that's open. So my message is not to run out of here after this session and start selling off your things, making the world market crash. It's more looking at this as an inspiration, as a different way of looking at things, and also being aware of that on the other side of this research, there are actually people like me that are researching you and researching how to live and how to organize their lives today, very much thanks to the internet and to the next phase of internet, which is artificial intelligence, so Internet of Things, blockchain, and also the energy internet, which I haven't seen that much of yet, but will emerge. So how does it feel to do this? Well, I alluded a little bit to it, but it feels, in the beginning, it felt hard to get rid of stuff, dematerializing things, because for some weird reason, and this is more sort of neuroscience, and I'm sure you know more about that than I do, I had some sort of an attachment to things that were mass-produced. I mean, there's millions of this kind of shirts in the world, yet I've made it mine. And I'm not sure if that is due to the relationship I've had with brands or with things in the past, but it took me a little bit of time to be okay with letting go with stuff. Some things I held on to. I'm still holding on to a really cool mountain bike that I bought in 2003 that I've not seemed able to get rid of. But I love biking, so I mean, it's a good thing. It's a bike. But once I moved and shifted into this space, the ownership, it became reversed. I love accessing things. So if you can give me access to the things I really want to do, I love that. I'm very open to that idea. If I'm being approached in ownership and owning something, I'm not that very interested. During these days here, I'm hoping to visit Porsche because they have released this new access program, which I think is brilliant, and it's based here in Atlanta, and it's a prototype. I actually think it's called Access or something similar, and I really love that idea because with the car, I only need the car a couple of times a year, and it's during specific time. And I think we'll see that with a lot of things moving forward. But on the other side of this, the digital access, it's really, really wonderful, and I feel more relaxed, and I actually feel that I have freed up the time and the space and my attention towards working on stuff that really matters to me. And I think that's sort of on a personal level was something that I felt very stressed about like 10, 12 years ago that I didn't really have, that I do have today. So I've also learned a new way of operating. So, I mean, we talked earlier about how the tools, technology, we shape technology and technology shapes us. And I think this big debate or this big subject between technology and humanity, I think we need to step into it a little bit more. I need to start changing, being okay with not just being changed. So I'm going to ask you a question. Is there anyone in this room that didn't bring their smartphone this morning? 1, 2. Okay, so make that 3. So I don't carry around a smartphone in my pocket anymore. So it's about being intentional. So if you look at this is very simple philosophy. This is, you accept emergence. Things are emerging, new technologies, things are changing. We sort of lived in a world for a long time where everything strived towards being stable. But life is not stable. And I think that's one of the biggest sort of shift in beliefs. We believe it should be stable, and it's stable, but life is rather the opposite, it's chaotic. And that gives a lot of great opportunity to make things more stable. But accepting emergence is accepting that, hey, here's some new cryptocurrencies. Interesting. Let's be open-minded about this. Let's compare this without the ego, without the attachment, and see when does it work? How can we make it work? When is it actually better to use a cryptocurrency than a fiat currency? So that's sort of looking at emergence open-minded. And then act with intention. Be intentional about the change. Decide that, instead of saying that, I feel flooded with information, make a stand. Be really clear with how you want to interact, both from an organizational business purpose, but also from an individual purpose. And then finally, it's all about creating impact. Whatever we do in our lives as an organization, creating real impact. And I think that's sort of what's guiding me forward. And I hope we have a couple of minutes for questions.
You have a couple of minutes.
Oh, excellent.
So the next 6 or 8 hours, I'm just going to be buying you beers and talking to you.
Okay. Thank you. Excellent.
Questions. Right here in the front. Can we get a microphone?
Where does your family live?
All right. So we spread out, but my boys still live in San Francisco. I live mostly, and I'm so happy to meet my friends from Latin America here. I live mostly in Chile, in Colombia, Mexico, and California these days. And it's by intent. I love the coast, I love the mountains, I love the outdoors. So when I'm not working, I'm back out in the outdoors, either with my family or just off with friends. And that's the whole point with freeing up time and the space and attention. It's my own country, this space.
Hi.
We got a question in the back.
Yes.
What about all the people who have to clean the Airbnb, or the driver, or the people who pack your Amazon stuff to send to you? You're not taking part in society. You're living the ultimate selfish existence. I feel you are irresponsible, and I don't really admire it.
Yeah. So, no, it's a very good. I appreciate your perspective. Yeah. Yes.
What has been the impact of this experience on your kids? You talked about them living there, but what have they experienced or embraced or rejected based on your lifestyle?
Right. So I think it's a afforded them a new kind of open-mindedness, recognizing, I think it's becoming kinder people, recognizing that everything that we have created in the world is a fabrication of humanity. I mean, we currently have 200 countries. It could be 5,000. It could be one country. So I think it's facilitating open-mindedness, being kind to people, self-empowered, being curious about traveling. I think those are the things that I would like to facilitate. And also recognizing that I don't think they will ever have a job in the future. I think we're changing so quickly that I think it's important for me that are experiencing this and living this world, and that's my responsibility, talking about society, to show them the real future and not the legacy future that we see. Yep.
We've got a question here.
I thought that was a very interesting perspective. I just have a quick question on, in terms of how do you go about dealing with the opportunity cost of learning all these new things? Obviously, you're considered about time, progress, value, impact. How do you manage that?
Well, I mean, that's a great question, and that's one of the big challenges, but I'm getting better and better at it. I think that the trick with it is network. So you build up a network. It doesn't need to be a big network, large in volume. It's about being, having contact with the right kind of people. And then there is a skill set that we're not really good at because our ego gets in the way, and that is asking for help. Just asking for help and being connected with people that know things that you have no idea about. And then being just very open-minded. So what I've also tried to do is I try to shift from delivery, because a lot of us are sort of very involved in delivering stuff. And if you don't need to deliver stuff, you can sort of be open to discovery and learning. And that's how I want to live my life. I want it to be a learning journey and not a delivery journey.
So, and I've got one question. All of these changes that you've gone through and the use of technology and the getting rid of stuff, what's been the most revealing change? What's been the most important change to you? What did you learn along this path? What's the most important thing you learned?
I think the most important is on a very deep personal level that I started to get more connected with who I am. Wanted to spend more time with myself and letting go of the ego that wanted things, the ego that wanted a specific career, the ego that was very much driven by society and the outside world, and then finding things that I find meaningful. So I think it's digging into and reconnecting with my honesty, my own honesty. So, and as I said, it's a personal experiment. It's a project. I'm looking at life as an experiment. I mean, if I'm lucky, I have another 20, 30 years. And I want to live that, with intention. But also being aware of that things are emerging that I need to address. And being open to those things and then create intention and looking for impact. I mean, the right kind of impact. Because I recognize and I hear from you that this doesn't resonate with all of you. And it doesn't need to. It's just one perspective.
One last very, very, very quick question, and
I have a comment first and then a question. The first comment is, as insights professionals, I don't think we should judge what we don't really fully understand because it's not exactly like us. So I think it's our almost professional role to not judge these from our perspective, but understand it as something that can expand who we are and the way we understand the world. So that was my comment. And I've got a question. The question is, how does strategy and emergence work together? Because if you just see what's happening and emerge, is strategy not something that is meant to give us a path? And how does that work with emergence?
Yes. No, it was a great question. So when I started out, I looked at the world. Okay, there's just one world. We all connected, 7-8 billion people. And I traveled across the world for a couple of years, a lot. 250,000 miles every year. And then I realized, well, wait a second, there's stuff that I that I'm missing out on. There's stuff that I'm more interested in. Then, so I started to shift. Out of this enormous freedom that I created, I started to really seek inwards and think about what am I interested in and what do I need and what's my intention? What's really my intention with my life? So I decided, well, geographically, location space, I'm going to focus on the Pacific. Very much, as I said, I'm interested in the coast and the mountains, and the Pacific Ocean is magic. That stretch from my own country, from California to Chile. Amazing. And then I started to look at what do I want to do? You know, what do I want to create? And I like this idea. I like to spread this idea of that it's possible to do pretty much anything today. And if we start thinking about and using technology in a more intentional way. So there is a strategy behind the madness, and it is very clear, but I'm not stuck in a 5-year plan. I'm listening, and I'm trying to balance that with the impact I want to make.
So are you around for a while?
Oh, yeah, the next 2 days.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.